The Air France, Hijacking and Operation Entebbe, 1976. A military feat against terrorism. Imagine yourself seated on an international flight, enjoying the relaxed atmosphere of a journey from Tel Aviv to Paris, when suddenly screams erupt from the passenger cabin. That was the fateful moment on June 27, 1976, when an Air France Airbus A300 flight AF-139 was hijacked by a group of international terrorists. This flight, departing from Ben Gurion Airport in Israel, with a brief stopover in Athens, Greece, before heading to the French capital, became the stage for one of the most dramatic hostage crises in modern history. But the story didn't end there. This event led to Operation Entebbe, a daring raid by Israeli special forces that rescued hundreds of hostages at Entebbe Airport in Uganda, thousands of kilometers away. The Air France hijacking and Operation Entebbe were not just a tragic chapter in history, but also a symbol of extraordinary determination and military prowess. They demonstrated how Israel, a small but resilient nation, confronted global terrorism, setting a new standard for counter-terrorism operations worldwide. Amid the tense geopolitical climate of the 1970s, with the Arab-Israeli conflict still simmering after the 1973 Yom Kippur War, this incident shook international public opinion. It proved that in the face of threats from extremist organizations like the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine, PFLP, no geographical distance was safe, and only decisive action could protect human lives. Hundreds of hostages, including women, children, and the elderly, were caught in a whirlwind of politics and violence, while the world watched every moment. Operation Entebbe not only saved lives, but also ignited national pride and served as a stark warning about the consequences of tolerating terrorism. Let us delve deeper into this story, from the first moments of the hijacking to the pinnacle of the heroic rescue. Yonatan 1. Background of the hijacking. To fully understand the Air France hijacking, we must rewind to the chaotic geopolitical landscape of the 1970s. The Middle East was a powder keg with ongoing conflict between Israel and Arab nations, compounded by the interventions of superpowers like the United States and the Soviet Union. Palestinian terrorist organizations, backed by certain authoritarian regimes, frequently used hijackings as a tool to draw international attention and press for political demands. The incident on June 27, 1976, was the culmination of a series of similar events, but its scale and consequences were unparalleled. Flight AF-139 departed from Tel Aviv in the morning with a planned stopover in Athens before flying directly to Paris. The Airbus A300, a modern aircraft for its time with a large capacity, carried 248 passengers from various nationalities, including Israelis, Jews from other countries, and European and American tourists. The crew consisted of 12 members, led by Captain Michel Bacos, an experienced Air France pilot. The atmosphere on the plane was initially normal. Passengers chatted, read books, or rested after the stop in Athens, where additional passengers boarded. But just minutes after takeoff from Athens around 12:30, hell broke loose. 4 hijackers disguised as ordinary passengers sprang into action. They belonged to 2 terrorist groups, 2 members from the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine, PFLP, a radical Palestinian organization led by Wadi Haddad, and 2 others from the Revolutionary Cells, a German far-left group. These were not amateurs. They were well-trained and carried weapons concealed in their luggage. The most prominent among them was Brigitte Kuhlmann, a 29-year-old German woman. Born into a middle-class family, Kuhlman had been a children's teacher before her life took a drastic turn when she joined the far-left revolutionary movement in Germany during the 1960s and 1970s. She became a member of the Baader-Meinhof group, also known as the Red Army faction, a terrorist organization notorious for bombings and kidnappings. Kuhlman was described as a ruthless fighter willing to sacrifice her life for her cause. Alongside her was Wilfried Bosse, another German comrade, and two Palestinians, Fayez Abdulrahim Jaber and Jael Naji al-Arjam. They carried handguns, grenades, and explosives cleverly hidden to bypass the lax security at Athens airport. The hijacking unfolded swiftly and professionally. Kuhlman was the first to act. She stood up, drew a gun, and threatened a flight attendant demanding access to the cockpit. Simultaneously, Bosse stormed the pilot's cabin, pointing a gun at Captain Bacos' head and declaring, "We are the Che Guevara and Tamara Bunke fighters," referring to two South American revolutionary icons. The remaining hijackers took control of the passenger cabin, forcing everyone to remain seated. They searched passengers, confiscating passports, wallets, and any items that could be used as weapons. Passengers were lined up, their identities checked, and those who resisted were threatened with grenades. Their demands were clear. They called for the governments of Israel, France, Germany, and other countries to release 53 Palestinian prisoners and far-left militants held in custody. Failure to comply would result in the plane and all hostages being blown up. The aircraft was forced to divert to Benghazi, Libya, a country friendly to terrorist groups under Muammar Gaddafi's rule. This moment marked the beginning of a harrowing week, with the lives of hundreds hanging by a thread. 2. Developments in Benghazi, Libya. After being seized, the Airbus A300 landed at Benina Airport in Benghazi, Libya in the late afternoon of June 27th. Libya at the time was a haven for terrorist groups, with Gaddafi openly supporting the Palestinian liberation movement. As soon as the plane touched down, it was surrounded by Libyan soldiers, not to rescue the hostages, but to assist the hijackers. The terrorists were allowed to refuel and rest while the passengers were held captive inside the aircraft for nearly 7 hours. Conditions on the plane were dire. The outside temperature soared to 40 degrees Celsius, and the cabin was stifling due to inadequate air conditioning. Passengers, including children and the elderly, endured thirst hunger and extreme fear. The hijackers patrolled the aisles, shouting orders in English and Arabic, ready to shoot anyone who moved. Some passengers later recounted feeling like they were in a flying prison, with the stench of sweat and urine permeating the air as the restrooms were locked. During this time, a pregnant passenger named Patricia began showing signs of early labor due to stress. Under pressure from international opinion, the hijackers agreed to release her to a local hospital. She became the first hostage, freed, a sign that the terrorists were not entirely inhumane, at least outwardly. However, the remaining hostages were still tightly held. Captain Bacos and his crew were given the option to leave but refused, choosing to stay and support the passengers. Bacos later said, "I couldn't abandon them. We were a family on this flight." After refueling and receiving further support from Libyan authorities, the plane took off at midnight, heading to its final destination, Entebbe, Uganda. The choice of Uganda was not random. The country was ruled by Idi Amin Dada, a notorious dictator known for his brutality and eccentricity. Amin had once been friendly with Israel, even receiving military training there. But after seizing power in 1971, he aligned with Arab regimes and the Soviet Union to counter Western influence. Entebbe became an ideal hotspot for the hijackers. Nehi Medihart 3, the situation in Entebbe, Uganda. The plane landed at Entebbe Airport on the morning of June 28th, and Idi Amin immediately appeared as a hero. Dressed in a flamboyant military uniform and flashing a fake smile, Amin welcomed the hijackers as friends, claiming he would mediate. In reality, he saw the situation as a political opportunity to boost his standing in the Arab and African worlds. Having previously expelled thousands of Indians and Jews from Uganda, Amin now openly supported the terrorists by providing food weapons and additional guards. The hostages were moved from the plane to the old terminal building, a dilapidated, dusty concrete structure with a filthy floor and stifling air. The number of hijackers grew to 8 as 4 Ugandan soldiers joined, guarding the hostages with AK-47 rifles. The terrorists sorted the hostages based on their passports. Non-Jewish and non-Israeli passengers were gradually released, while Jews and Israeli citizens were separated into a smaller room. This act evoked horrific memories of the Holocaust, causing panic among many hostages. Some elderly passengers, survivors of World War II, wept and prayed, fearing history was repeating itself. Living conditions were deplorable. Food was limited to dry bread and dirty water sanitation. Facilities were scarce, and mosquitoes swarmed everywhere. Children cried in fear, while adults struggled to remain calm. The hijackers frequently threatened, shouted orders, and even beat those who resisted. Brigitte Kuhlmann, with a cold demeanor, moved among the hostage groups, preaching about the revolutionary struggle. However, the French crew led by Captain Bacos became a significant source of encouragement. They refused to leave despite being allowed to sharing food and comforting others. Bacos was later hailed as a hero for this decision. Meanwhile, Idi Amin continued his charade. He visited the hostages daily, bringing a camera to take photos, and declared on television that he was protecting them. Behind the scenes, he ordered the Ugandan military to assist the terrorists, even providing additional guards. The situation grew increasingly tense as the deadline for the demands approached. If the prisoners were not released, the hijackers would begin killing hostages on July 1st. January 4. Preparation and execution of Operation Entebbe. Faced with a critical situation, the Israeli government under Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin could not stand idly by. Negotiating with Idi Amin was futile, as he clearly sided with the terrorists. Israel opted for military action, a bold decision, as Entebbe was over 4,000 kilometers from Jerusalem across hostile airspace. To buy time, Israel pretended to negotiate, persuading the hijackers to extend the deadline by 3 days until July 4th. Planning took place urgently in Tel Aviv. The overall commander was General Yekutiel Adam, with Deputy Commander Matan Vilnai and Dan Shomron in charge of ground operations. Mossad intelligence played a crucial role. They obtained blueprints of Entebbe Airport from engineers who had built it with Israel's assistance to Uganda years earlier, satellite imagery, and information from released hostages. A major challenge was the distance the planes needed to refuel in Nairobi, Kenya, where President Jomo Kenyatta secretly agreed to assist. The operation, codenamed Thunderbolt, later renamed Operation Yonatan in honor of its commander, was executed on the night of July 3, 1976. 4 Hercules C-130 transport planes flew low to avoid radar, accompanied by 2 Boeing 707s serving as a field hospital and command center. The force consisted of 100 Special Forces operatives divided into 3 groups. The main group led by Sayeret Matkal, Israel's elite unit under Lieutenant Colonel Yonatan Netanyahu, brother of future Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, attacked the terminal. Golani and paratrooper units blocked Ugandan soldiers, and a support team destroyed MiG fighter jets to prevent pursuit. The most ingenious tactic was using a black Mercedes mimicking Amin's vehicle accompanied by 2 Land Rovers to deceive the guards. The convoy sped into the airport at midnight and the assault began. In 53 chaotic minutes, Israeli forces killed 7 hijackers, including Kuhlman, and Bosa destroyed 8 Ugandan MiG jets and rescued 102 of the 106 hostages. The firefight was intense. Ugandan soldiers returned fire but were overwhelmed by precise firepower. Losses were inevitable. Yonatan Netanyahu was killed, leading the assault becoming the only Israeli casualty. 3 hostages died due to friendly fire, a tragic accident, and some were injured. Dora Bloch, a 75-year-old British-Israeli hostage, left behind in a Ugandan hospital before the operation, was later murdered on Amin's orders in retaliation. 5. Aftermath and significance. After the operation, the world was divided. The West praised Israel. U.S. President Gerald Ford called it an extraordinary achievement, and Britain and France sent congratulations, viewing it as a new standard for counter-terrorism. In contrast, African and Arab nations condemned Israel harshly. Idi Amin convened an Organization of African Unity (OAU) meeting to denounce Israel's invasion, and Palestinian groups vowed revenge. Amin even held a funeral for the hijackers and ordered the brutal murder of Dora Bloch as retaliation. Historically, Operation Entebbe demonstrated Israel's superior military capabilities, from precise intelligence to flawless coordination. It became a textbook case for special forces operations, influencing later missions like the failed U.S. hostage rescue in Iran in 1980. Yonatan Netanyahu became a heroic symbol with the operation and numerous memorials in Israel named after him. The event also shifted perspectives on hostage rescues. Negotiations were no longer the only option, and military action became a viable choice. It warned the world of the dangers of cross-border terrorism influencing global aviation security policies. In conclusion, the Air France, Hijacking, and Operation Entebbe in 1976 were a military triumph showcasing Israel's courage, creativity, and determination in the face of terrorism. From the terrifying moments on the flight to the lightning raid in Entebbe, this story reminds us of the value of human life and the relentless fight against extremist violence. In today's volatile world, with advanced technology and complex conflicts, could any nation execute a similar operation? We invite readers to share their thoughts. What lessons do you take from Entebbe